Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Paying It Forward and Giving It Back. My name is Bill Pomeroy. I'm a leukemia transplant survivor, had AML, and I'm affiliated with the William G. Pomeroy Foundation, which I created to help diversify the registry of bone marrow transplant donors. I'm going to be your moderator for this afternoon. And the session is designed to be interactive. But I do ask you to hold your questions until we get done with all four presentations. We're going to be audio recording the session for those that cannot attend the meeting. So when you ask your question, please make sure you speak into the microphone, keep your questions short and succinct, and direct them to just one member of the panel rather than to everybody. So join me in welcoming our panelists. Today we have Cindy Kessler, Jackie Foster, Mary Elena Lee, and Mark Segreto. Cindy is the Director of Patient Support for Blood and Marrow Transplant Information Network, where she has helped hundreds of patients, caregivers, and survivors find support and validation of their experience through the Caring Connections Peer Support Program. Jackie Foster is a patient education specialist at the National Marrow Donor Program, Be the Match, where she collaborates with multiple teams to implement patient education programs. And Mary Elena Lee is the Government Affairs Director for the Northeast region of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. In that role, she oversees LLS's regional policy efforts, working to engage state and federal lawmakers and regulators in improving access to care for people living with blood cancers. And then we have Mark Segreto. He's Donor Recruitment Coordinator at Delete Blood Cancer DKMS, where he works closely with families, communities, and corporations to build blood cancer awareness. We'll begin with Ms. Kessler.
Hello, everyone. I am so pleased to be here with so many people who want to learn about paying it back, or giving it back, and paying it forward, to learn to take your experiences and give to somebody else is very special. It is people like you that make what I do an amazing job. I run the Caring Connection program at BMT InfoNet, which is a peer support program. So I'd like to kind of begin what a peer support program is. It is information, support, and hope to patients, but also the caregivers and donors. Each of these groups have their own set of concerns, so we like to match patients with patients, caregivers with caregivers, donors with donors, so they can really relate to the concerns and worries that they have. The connections are usually made by phone, but we do have sometimes a request put in by email that they just want to connect by an email. What makes it special is that it's by someone who has been there, someone who could really relate to what they're going through. And many times we find that just talking with someone who's been through it is so comforting. So how our program works is by gathering information. We like to learn about you, your experiences, your outlook. We collect the details of your diagnosis, the age, the type of transplant, the hospital, your life situation. All these details allow us to put it into our computer, so when someone's calling and wanting support, we're able to do a search to find the closest match for them. And the more volunteers we have in our system, the closer the match can be. And we base it on whatever the person is looking for. If the person is looking for, say, someone with small children or someone that is in a certain age category, we're able to look for that. So how to best provide support really begins with listening. Listening to understand someone's concerns. Many times when they're talking, it's going to sound very familiar to maybe what you went through, and you can validate their feelings. There are times, though, where they'll be facing something different, and you'll learn to take some of your experiences and be able to make it meet their needs. You can provide an objective ear and really time for them to talk. As someone talks and expresses their concerns, it becomes a very healing process for them. Providing realistic hope is also very important, obviously. When they're hearing things, they tend to dwell on the negative. So by sharing both the positive and the realistic part of what a transplant is what they're looking to hear. You also want to know what your limits are. Are you really ready to start talking? Are you ready to help somebody else? As you're listening to somebody else, it's going to make you relive your experience. And if you're not ready to really express that, now's not the time. Wait until you're ready for that. And you also want to have the time to be able to give to someone, to really listen to what they're going through. As there's good things to do, there's some things not good to do. There's really no benefit, and actually some of these things can be harmful. No medical advice. We want to leave that to the professionals. No telling the patient what they must do. No recommending specific doctors or hospitals. We don't want them to undermine where they're at. I mean, they're nervous, they're scared, and if you start questioning things, it only makes their worry more. And please, no war stories, no going on and on and on about on an experience you have. You're really trying to meet their needs and express those stories that are going to help them get through something. And again, no analyzing and providing psychological counseling. One of the things to think about is, what were some of the things that people said or did when you were getting ready for a transplant? What were the ones that were positive? And then also think of what people said and did that maybe were not so positive. And keep these in mind if you decide to start helping somebody else. Some of the frequently asked questions are, how are the connections made? They are made, again, we start with our database, and as somebody calls and looking for support, if your name comes up as someone that we would like to connect you with, we don't just give out your information. We'll reach out to you to say, are you available to be connected with somebody? If the answer is yes, we'll set you up by sending out an email, sharing your connections, and get you started with that. And how often are you called, or how much time will this take? It really depends on the person. Sometimes it's a one phone call, you talk for an hour, they're done, they're good to go. Many times they want to continue this, maybe check in with you afterwards. The advantages of peer support is really a win-win situation. They get to gain someone to listen to, they provide a patient's view of what a transplant is like. You can gain information from someone who's been there, those little things like maybe bring a comfortable pillow when you're in the hospital, listen to your music, all those little things that maybe you wish you knew about, or maybe someone had told you. Those are the things they're looking for. And I was told I have 5 minutes. I'm going to try to quickly go through this. So there's also many things. I'm going to have Bill come up here if he would. There's also advantages for being a volunteer, and Bill has volunteered for us many times, and if he could quickly say the advantages.
Okay. Yes, when I was first diagnosed, like many of you in the room, I was in that state of mind that I didn't really know where I was, and I had the distinct opportunity and advantage of talking with 3 people that had been through this process prior to my going through it, and it was a tremendous help for me with hope and optimism, as well as learning more facts about what was going on, because I really couldn't understand anything the doctors were telling me. BMT InfoNet was an awful lot of help too along the way. But then when I got out of the transplant and some time lapsed, I wanted to try to bring that same advantage to newly diagnosed patients. So I became a volunteer also to provide that kind of support. And my wife and I would do that. She was my caregiver. And we found that the other folks that we talked to got the same advantage that I did, but quite surprisingly, we really got quite a lot out of it too as a volunteer. It really helped us, and it made us feel good, and it made us feel really important that here we were able to provide a very important service to other folks. So if you're out there and you're a transplant survivor and you've been thinking about getting into this type of program, I highly recommend it, not only for those that you can help, but also how you can help yourself.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for everything you've done. So who else offers peer support program? There are a variety of disease-focused organizations that offer it, so that is one way of looking into it. There's also some online ways to provide peer support with listservs, Facebook groups, and other kind of chat rooms. In person, there's support groups, hospital visits and meetings. And I kind of want to just end with a quote by Scott Adams. Remember, there's no such thing as a small act of kindness. Every act creates a ripple with no logical end. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jackie Foster, and I'm a patient education specialist at Be the Match. And I'm here to talk about one type of volunteer activity at Be the Match, giving expert feedback, specifically your feedback on patient education materials and resources like booklets, videos, fact sheets, things like that. This type of activity, volunteer activity, isn't something that's maybe easy to find or widely advertised, but it's definitely there. We do it at Be the Match. Your hospitals, patient education department does it, and other national organizations like the National Cancer Institute Office of Education does it. It might be hard to find this type of volunteer activity because it can go by so many different names, and there's kind of a range or a spectrum from very formal patient feedback to more informal patient feedback. Sometimes it goes by different names like user testing or providing feedback, or if it's more formal, it might be called participating in a focus group or participating in an audience interview. Again, if it's more formal type of feedback that you're providing, it might even be part of patient education research, and there might be a consent process or even an incentive like a gift card that you might be provided after participating. But first, I just wanted to reiterate that yes, you are an expert. You are highly experienced in your own transplant process and diagnosis and what was helpful for you and what didn't help you and what you wished you knew before transplant. And that's what we need. When we're creating educational resources for patients, we need feedback from you on what did you want to know that wasn't told to you, or what was told but in a confusing way. And so you are all highly qualified for this type of volunteer activity, even caregivers and patients alike. It's important for us at Be the Match and other organizations that are making patient education resources to get feedback from a good mix of patients and caregivers, so it doesn't matter anything really about you other than that you've been through transplant and this experience. You can have any level of education, any level of professional experience. You can speak any language, any race or ethnicity or gender or religious background. We want kind of the variety of people to provide feedback. So I want to just give two real-life examples of how patients have been influential in influencing messages that have gone out from cancer centers and cancer organizations, both in positive and negative ways. So the first is just to think about, imagine yourself driving down the freeway and seeing billboards. They're advertising, a hotel, and you should drink this type of soda, and blah, 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 blah. And then you see a sign about a cancer center, and the way it's worded, it kind of implies that the person going to this cancer center beat her cancer because she tried hard enough and went to this cancer center. And you're thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. I know lots of people who tried really hard, who prayed, who wished, who willed, who did everything in their power to get rid of their disease, and that didn't make a difference. And yet this billboard is sending this completely wrong message. Well, that is a real story. That happened to a woman. She was a patient at this particular cancer center and also a blogger online. And so she took her message to the internet, to her blog, and she took her message, more importantly, I think, to the administrators at that cancer center, and just really gave the feedback that this is not the message you want to be giving. And you think, well, that billboard, it was written by somebody, it was probably reviewed by multiple people, and somehow it really just missed the mark. And this can happen, and it's important, for patients to give their feedback on the tone of information that's given, and the content given. So while this isn't a great example of volunteering, because the Cancer Center didn't ask for her input in developing this billboard, it does illustrate how your experience and perspective is valuable. And it just illustrates the importance for me of remembering that it's how important and necessary it is to listen to you, because you are the ultimate people who are going to benefit from our educational resources, and we have to write it in a way that everybody can feel comfortable reading it or learning about it and understand it. So the next real-life example comes from a large national organization. This image on the right was one of many that was included in a book about diabetes, but the authors wanted to make sure that this book kind of spoke to a variety of people, and they weren't sure if this image would resonate with African American women. So what they did is they field tested it. So that's another kind of way that it might be, that this type of volunteering might be described. And they asked community members their thoughts on the image, who it was, what it was about. And during one of the discussions, an African American woman with diabetes said, you know what, that's me and the child I was never able to have because of my condition. So in this story, the woman was able to see herself in the particular image. And even though the authors thought that the image wasn't going to be a good image for this educational resource, it turned out that it was. So again, this woman's feedback really helped to create a resource that would speak to other women. So how can I help? So volunteers, people who volunteer in this way, what might they be asked to do? So it kind of depends on what the educational resource is about. Is it going to be making a new resource? So if in this situation the patient educators may want to learn, what information patients wish they had before transplant. What do you think patients should know about, for example, graft versus host disease before transplant? What was the most helpful way someone explained something like stem cells to you before transplant? Or if the patient educators are trying to improve an existing resource, they may ask you to read a booklet or watch a DVD and give feedback. They might ask, is this an interesting resource to read? Do I want to keep reading? Is it too technical? Does it explain things simply? Is it helpful information? Here's kind of an example of one of the activities that somebody might complete if they're reviewing an educational resource. So they maybe will read something, and after reading the booklet or watching the video, they might be asked simply to circle the words or phrases that describe it. And so this is purely your own opinion. Is it attractive? Is it hard to follow? This is really important for patient educators to know. Our goal is always to make resources relevant, easy to read, and helpful. So again, it doesn't matter your educational experience, your background. You don't have to be an editor of a newspaper to be able to provide this type of feedback, because it's really important that all of our educational resources are easy for everyone to read. So at Be the Match, our transplant recipient and caregivers who volunteer for this choose a project that's of interest to them, and they receive a guide with instructions on what to look for with a resource and how to evaluate it. Then they watch or read the educational resource, and then they can provide their feedback in whatever way is easy for them, by phone, mail, or email. So one of the benefits of this is that it your schedule, it can be, you prefer to do this activity at 2 a.m. on a weekend, and that's totally fine, or you can do it at 10 a.m. on a Monday. Just the scheduling of it makes this activity easy for a lot of people to participate in, and it's just so important that we get your feedback. So I'm asking for help from you if you are interested. So here's our bethematchvolunteer.org. And I just want to conclude by restating that all patient educators really want the educational resources that we develop to be helpful, relevant, easy to read and understand. So we have our own kind of ability to translate doctor speak into readable language, but we need your help. So thank you for your time. And if you want to sign up for anything, you can visit our booth. We got to sign up. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mary Elena. I'm with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I work in our Office of Public Policy. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about the work that we do all around the country with our patients and families and local chapters, specifically in the advocacy and policy arena, for the purposes of improving access to care and accelerating the cures. Many of you may be familiar with LLS. Our mission is pretty straightforward: cure the blood cancers and improve quality of life for patients and families, as I said. If you don't know much about us, or if you know a little bit, want to learn more, you're very welcome to check out our website, lls.org. Tons of great information on there, including information on how to connect with our local chapters. You know, if you know much about LLS, you know that one of the things that we put a lot of time and effort into is investments in research. That's something that we're very proud of. We're very excited to see the new emerging therapies that are coming to market as a result of decades of research that's being done in the blood cancer space. But at the same time, for as excited as we are about that, we are, I would say, equally, if not more frustrated by the number of patients whose insurance coverage does not make those new emerging innovative therapies available to them, either because the insurer is obligating the patient to cover a cost share that is really out of reach, that's astronomical, or maybe it's because that new drug isn't even on the formulary for your insurance plan, or maybe, talking a bit more generally, maybe the problem is that patients can't navigate the healthcare system because of the way that it's become so fragmented in our country. These are the sorts of issues that concern us in LLS's Office of Public Policy. I would say this is where the rubber hits the road, right? This is where advocacy and policy play a critical role in helping to secure the policies, right, the laws and regulations that ensure that our patients have access to health insurance coverage, which is of good value, right, which is actually affordable. And it's through our advocacy and policy work that we're also helping to accelerate new therapies, right, helping to get them through the review process and to the market, into the hands of our patients sooner, namely by working with the FDA on that approval process. Now, I know all of what I just said can be a little vague and hard to wrap your head around. What exactly is a regulation? Laws, this, not to mention Congress and our state capitals can all seem pretty unnavigable and unfriendly, right? So I just want to give you two examples of successes that we've recently experienced. And when I say we, I mean not just LLS and our immediate family, but really the patient community. You'll hear me say we and our community and other advocacy organizations a lot, because these successes are really thanks to a number of great organizations like those that are here at this conference, right? It's the result of work that we've all done in collaboration. So two quick successes. At the federal level, in 2012, we won passage of a law that included something, that created something called a breakthrough therapy designation. This is, it's a now 2-year-old designation that the FDA can grant to a manufacturer if the therapy that they've got in clinical trials is showing really great promise. The value in this designation is that it really speeds up that review process. One of the makers with ibrutinib, for example, said by his estimates, ibrutinib was able to come to market 2 years sooner than it would have if not for the breakthrough therapy designation. So that right there is a great tangible example of something that as advocates we were able to make happen. At the state level, in Oregon, actually this was earlier this year, working together we were able to convince the Department of Insurance there to lift a 2-year waiting period on transplants, right? 2 years that patients are being obligated to wait before they would be eligible for coverage for their transplants. Huge deal, another great success. Now, all that said, if there's one message that you take from me today, I hope it's this. It's that your voice, your story is really critical to advocacy and public policy. And so for that reason, I encourage you, if this appeals to you, I encourage you to think about getting engaged with LLS or any of the other great communities in your community, any of the other great organizations in your community that are involved in this type of work. You know, if not for your stories, if not for you coming to legislators, coming with us to talk to regulators, right? If not for that happening, there's very little chance that we would make it to the top of the priority list when it comes to the work that all of our policymakers are doing. I mean, truly, you give context and meaning to this work, right? You make it purposeful. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, you're voters, right? Or hopefully you're all voters. Legislators know that you are their constituents, they work for you. Now, if politics really bores you, you find it really painful, if the idea of reading a law makes your eyes roll back in your head, don't worry, you're not alone. The good news is there are so many different ways for people to engage in the advocacy space. I've listed a couple of them here for you, pretty straightforward. Collecting stories, right? That's one tremendously valuable way that we engage with our patients in this space. The bone marrow transplant, the organ example that I mentioned to you, that came to us through a patient who called us up and said, hey, did you know about this crazy archaic requirement that exists in the law out here, right? So connecting us with those real life experiences, connecting us with those problems that need to be addressed through policy work, that is of tremendous value. Of course, helping to educate policymakers and the media, going to, lobby days, or as we call them, mission days, meeting with your members of Congress or with your state legislators. Of course, that's one that a lot of people know about. Seeking out a leadership role. If this is something that really lights your fire, organizations like the American Cancer Society, LLS to be sure, again, many others, we have formal structures where we have a state captain role or something of that sort, where we rely on you greatly to help us organize the patient and family community to take action on the issues that are really pressing right now. Now, just to give you an idea of some of the things that are, some of the issues that are active presently, at the federal level, a lot of groups are working on the two bills that I've listed here. These have to do with cost sharing for medications, cost sharing under Medicare and under commercial insurance coverage. Major issue in the blood cancer space in particular, given that so many patients are taking these oral medications where the insurer is saying, hey, you've got to pay 30% of the cost or 40% of the cost, right? So that's a major issue that we're all working on in Federal Hill and state capitals. That as well, along with things like making sure that prior authorization burdens are not too great, making sure that, things like step therapy, the rules that apply to if and when and at what quantity you're able to get your drugs, right? We want to make sure that those aren't too burdensome. So with all that said, this is how you can get in touch with LLS and with me. I work here in the Northeast. For us, our Northeast region is New York, New Jersey, and then all of New England, but I have counterparts all throughout the country, as well as local chapter staff that would be very happy to take any questions from you about the work that we do in advocacy and policy, how you can engage, all that good stuff. So I know there are a couple, I see a couple of LLS staff people in the room in the back. If you guys would raise your hands if you're dying to know if a lobby day is a painful thing or a fun thing. They've all been to them many times over, and we'll be happy to share more with you, and I'll be here happy to take questions after it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Segretto. I am a donor recruitment coordinator based out of New York. I want to start off by saying I'll be talking about Delete Blood Cancer's mission, our goals for the United States, and kind of taking you to how you can help us, partner with us to raise awareness about blood cancer and pay it forward. But I definitely want to start off by saying that I feel, first of all, proud to be on this panel with my fellow panelists, and I'm humbled by everybody in this room, the caregivers and the patients. So I think you guys pay it forward every day just by being yourselves, so thank you. I'm guessing this is a remote that moves it forward. So, Delete Blood Cancer. As I mentioned, I'm a recruiter. All right, I help raise awareness about blood cancer in the United States. Delete Blood Cancer started with one family's mission to find a bone marrow donor, and today we are part of the world's largest bone marrow donor center. Since 1991, Delete Blood Cancer and DKMS have registered more than 4.5 million donors worldwide, and provided and facilitated in more than 40,000 potentially life-saving bone marrow transplants. Again, our mission at Delete Blood Cancer is to build a critical mass of suitable bone marrow and stem cell donors so that blood cancer deaths are deleted from our world one swab at a time. Only 30% of the patients find a match within their own family, so 70% depend on unrelated donors or cord blood. Matching is linked to ethnic background, minority patients face a much greater challenge in finding a matching donor on the registry. And what I really want to convey, and I know that everybody in this room understands the importance of registering more donors and raising awareness, but I feel that I really should give you my background, and because I basically want to convey the importance that I feel from my heart. I'm actually a donor myself. So to give you my background, my brother was diagnosed with AML, February of last year. So like many of you and your families, I'm sure, you were scared. You really didn't know what to do. I was told within a week that he needed a bone marrow transplant, and that there was a 25% chance that my siblings and I would be a match. So he was diagnosed at Stony Brook University Hospital. I worked with Elizabeth Schumann, who was my brother's designated social worker, and she had told me the night, I think it was February 7th, that there's organizations out there like Be the Match, like Delete Blood Cancer, that can help us raise donors onto the registry to help possibly save my brother's life. So within 10 minutes, I'm Italian, I'm from Long Island, I'm aggressive, I was on the phone making that call. I work with a drive coach named James Kirkland. James is on the DR team as well, just like me. And we started planning, really from the bottom up, finding a location, picking a time, figuring out the best location possible where we can really make an impact. So we hit the ground running. We called news teams, radio, local colleges. And on the day after my brother's 24th birthday, we had a bone marrow drive, March 2nd, at a local pub. We registered 200 people, 200 potential lifesavers. It was amazing. I mean, other than the money we raised for the cause, Lewis couldn't be at the event. He was in his hospital. He actually Skyped in on 200 TVs in the restaurant. And what this really did, I mean, other than being by my brother's side, being there for them, talking to them, there really wasn't too much we can do as a direct family. And then you have our distant family members who couldn't be there that really want to be a part of something special. And Delete Blood Cancer really gave us that opportunity to bring everybody into this circle. Everybody can pitch again, because to be honest, there's only so much chicken parmesan you can make for somebody. Everybody was raising raffles, putting it on their Facebook. So we raised 200 donors. Where we went with that, and this is that event was one of the proudest things in my life. I was hooked. I pulled the director aside. I demanded a job with the company. He said no. I met the CEO. I won him over. So I've been working with them since April 29th of last year. So with that 200 donors, we found 14 matches for 14 different patients. One of them actually went on to collection, and it's an amazing story because this one particular donor his mother had died from cancer 4 years earlier. He actually ended up donating to a patient next door where my brother was in that hospital. So it really goes to show you it's full circle. And my brother got to see that, and he pulled me aside, and he's like, you know what? It sucks what I'm going through, but I apologize. His disease was justified. So I was hooked right away, so I began working with Delete Blood Cancer. I ended up being a match for my brother. I donated May 13th of last year. And it was the most proud thing I've ever done. So what I'm here today is to, again, you all pay it forward. I'm proud of everybody in this room. How do you get involved with Delete Blood Cancer? You can organize a drive. You get to work with me every single day, and people like me around the country, so that's a plus. Basically, we'll be your drive coaches. We'll help you plan. I mean, you know your area best, so we really look to hear your story. Okay, we love meeting with patients' families. Okay, me in particular, because I know what they're going through. I know what you all go through. I get to meet with them and really, really guide them, tell them about my experience, and we always stay positive. So we'll help you build a drive in your area. We'll work with you to contact your local media. You can also host a swap party. So a drive is a large-scale drive, anywhere from 100 and plus. A swap party is about 50 to 25. And over the course of the summer, we have barbecues, we're at pool parties, we're at bake sales. That's your swap party, where we send you the materials, we'd offer you training, and offer you assistance through the entire process. Okay? Again, the goal to register more donors. You can also plan a fundraiser. Okay? Again, a bake sale is a great way to do that to help support our mission. Or there's thousands of drives held each year. You can find this information out on our website. You can look at the schedule. You can contact us, and we'll schedule you to volunteer at one of our drives. So, also, other than volunteering with us at these drives, people can register online. So, right now, if you're in school or if you have a job, if you weren't able to attend these drives, you can still basically share our information through your social pages. Anybody that goes to deleteBloodCancer.org can register online. We actually send a kit out to your house. You swab up at home, you drop it in your mailbox, you send it back in, and your good is done. One last note I want to leave you with. If you do work in a large-scale corporation, honestly, that's our bread and butter besides universities. Because what we do is we'll come to your corporation, a regional recruiter will come to your corporation, train your HR team, about the drive, really educate about blood cancer, and we'll have a large-scale drive. We actually set a drive September 11th for one of the first responders we work with, Jimmy Martinez. You might have seen him on social media. We registered 100 people in the New York City AOL office and the Beverly Hills AOL office. And on September 11th, we registered over 1,700 people online from that story alone. So your story really matters. As I said, you being here, you sharing your stories, pays it forward already, and I'm really proud of everybody in this room. I'm going to be outside at our Delete Blood Cancer table today. If you have questions, if you want to take my card, if you want to find out more, please feel free to stop by. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have some time for questions. We'd like to entertain questions from you folks. I do ask you to please be succinct and direct your questions to a particular panelist if you can. We want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to ask a question. We have our first question from the back of the room.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. The last gentleman, I have had this idea in my head and it just came to me again. I wonder if it was ever came to you to suggest there be some sort of connection made between the organization and the Motor Vehicle Bureau, because everyone signs up to be an organ transplanter, and I think that is a really good time when kids are getting their licenses to be asked if they want to be a bone marrow registry member.
That's actually a great question. And there actually is a law being proposed to, I believe, New York State to make it required to register when you pick up your license. The only thing I'll say about that is we really want qualified potential donors. So by forcing someone to get registered, that's really, personally, I can speak personally, that's not my goal. At a drive, I'd rather register 25 qualified potential donors that'll go on with the donation as opposed to 150. So I think it's a great idea. We just have to walk that fine line of balancing quantity versus quality.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this side over here? Don't be bashful. Come on. We have a question over here. Please wait for the microphone.
My question is for Cindy. I called one of those, like someone to talk to, and I had a bad experience. My questions were ones that I didn't want to ask my nurse or doctor. It was like, when you went in the hospital, what did you leave at home that you wished you had, and what did you bring that you wished you left home? So you weren't having your family like try to find something for you that was in your third drawer under something, and so I wasn't matched up with someone very well. And at the end, she said to me that she was no longer in remission and she was just going to die. So I thanked her very much for her time and wished her good luck. Well, about your thing about the medical advice, I was having some of the same problems with the drug that she was going to be put on for this, so I totally understood where she was coming from, and I had been trying all over to find something to help this. Well, I did find a drug for it, and I left a message for her, and I don't know, she did call me back, and I've never heard from her again, so I don't know if she really tried it or not. But is that like giving medical advice when you tell them you found a drug to try and it worked for you for the same symptom, or?
I look at it that you want to share information, and you can always suggest things for them to ask their doctor, ask questions, help them formulate questions to their doctor. So you're not giving medical advice as far as you need to do this, but something to consider. This worked for me. Maybe you want to ask your doctor to see if it would fit in with your protocol, because we don't know everyone's specifics. But yes, sharing information, and especially post-transplant. I think there's a lot of a lot of learning that is done between long-term survivors. And I think that's a different relationship when you're talking with someone, when you're talking with each other within this room. You guys are talking at a different level versus someone who's just starting out. I guess I'm thinking someone who's just been diagnosed and talking with someone long-term. It's a different level of communication if that's kind of answering your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have one more question here on this side, a couple of rows back, and then we'll come over to the other side of the room. I encourage you over there.
Hi, I'm Debbie, and I'm 2 years out of transplant, but mine's more like a comment. I met Cindy through the volunteering. I think if you're going to volunteer with the woman that was just speaking, try again, call Cindy back, say, gee, we really didn't have a good contact. Is there someone else you would have in mind? If people are volunteering, try and be sensitive when you're speaking to these new people. Stay positive. If you've had a lot of bad experiences, you kind of, not that you're lying, but you don't want to tell them every nitty-gritty kind of complication that maybe you've had. You can keep telling them that they're all individual. You know, you're not going to paint it rosy because it wasn't rosy. But I did tell them, you know, like what to expect. And, you know, some of them are saying, oh, you know, gee, is it going to take that long? I thought I'm going back to work after 4 weeks, you know. And I said, well, everybody's individual, but it can take months without going into, you know, I couldn't get off the couch, you know, I had to stay, you know, I couldn't be away from my home. You don't want to get them fearful of even attempting their stem cell transplant. I spoke to people prior to, and those just a little bit out. So I think if you're going to volunteer, and one of the things I felt like, gee, you kind of feel you're good for nothing when you're home resting on your couch and not able to, you're tired from taking a shower, things like that. You don't want to overwhelm them with those things, but just tell them, be sensitive that their body has to heal, and, you know, it's going to take a while, and everybody's individual, but don't, you know, kind of don't bombard them with too much negative stuff. But my mouth could work, as you can tell, so I think then that's something I felt I could do to share with others when you're feeling low. And if you're a person that needs boosting up, they can probably help you with somebody that can talk one-on-one with your problems, but kind of don't scare away people that are going through stuff or going to be going through stuff, and try not to be the doctor, like, you know, she was saying. Share things that work, but, you know, keep saying they're individuals. Check with their doctor first before they're going to try some new med, or I don't know. Don't want to take up a lot of time, but I just wanted to share.
Thank you for your question. Maybe you should volunteer to be on the panel next year. We appreciate your comments really very much. Is there anybody on this side of the room? I don't want to miss anybody. Okay, we have another question right down towards the front then. This right over here. And we'll have the microphone to you in just a moment. Right there, the gentleman.
I have two questions. One to Mark. Could you elaborate on what a qualified versus a regular person wanting to donate is? And then the other question for the entire panel has to do with privacy and having your health out there. You know, when we volunteer, how do you control the privacy issues so that the whole world doesn't know what our diagnosis is?
Okay, I'll go first. That's a good question. Unfortunately, there are those that register with delete blood cancer, and for whatever reason, down the road, let's say it was a given year or 2 years down the road, when they find out that they're a match to possibly want to donate, they're not comfortable. And for whatever reason, if that was job, moving around, or just not really keen on donating bone marrow, it happens more often than you'd think. So we want to make sure we educate. That's the most important part. And I feel, to the last question to me earlier, if it is kind of imposed on somebody, they should be signing up to sign up. And again, it's about quality, not quantity. So hopefully that answers your question.
Wait a minute. We had one more comment over here.
Do you want to add anything?
I
just wanted to add to your question as far as privacy goes. Once you're into our database and you volunteer to be part of our Caring Connection program, we don't ever give out your information without speaking with you first. If you came up as a match, we would call you and say, are you ready to be connected? Give you a heads up, and then we'd go ahead with the connection. We send out an email just sharing first name, state, and phone number. So we're very aware of that. And also an example of just kind of our policy, I had a gentleman who's in this room today who came and asked me can you connect me with someone else who is diagnosed with what I had? I'm trying to connect with people. I'm uncomfortable giving out names of who that they are, so I'm trying to find them, asking them, hey, there's someone here that wants to talk with you, or would you like to meet them? And so we do value that, and we do keep that as tight as possible.
Thank you, Cindy. So far, this side of the room is way ahead on questions. So we're going to try to get this side.
I'm going to even it up.
We do have one question over here, I believe.
Actually, it's just a general question. First of all, I think everything that you do is wonderful. It's fantastic. And this is by far the best one of these I've been to. Everybody should be here. But I was fortunate to have a relative who was my donor, and I was just curious, when you have somebody who comes from Germany, say, or California that you meet, and I don't know about this because I didn't go through this, who pays for that person to travel here and their expenses? Because they wouldn't do mine until my brother was sitting right there in the room.
Yep, so I can answer that for Be the Match. Sure. DKMS is, one of our...
We have an answer from the panel.
We have a network of donor centers, DKMS being one of them. So when a patient is looking for a donor through our registry that we share with DKMS and partner with their donor with the registries and international registries as well. That donor, if it's a donor in Germany and a patient in, say, California, the donor goes to a donor center in Germany, and so it's based wherever they are. They can go to there's donor centers across the United States, so the donor can decide that they want to donate at a donor center close to them, and then there's a courier who would collect those cells. So it's a person who's qualified and trained and does this and collects the cells and transports them, usually within 24 to 48 hours of the collection, to the hospital where the patient is at. The cost of that, how it's paid for, can be sometimes billed through the patient's insurance. Sometimes there's, depending on international donations and things like that, there's different grants, because sometimes insurance is picky about what they'll cover. They may say, well, we pay for bone marrow transplant, but not for the testing or the collection. So there's a lot of different grants through Be the Match and through other organizations that patients can access, but typically that's how it's managed.
Thank you, Jackie. Give this side a chance to catch up, and then we'll move to the other side over here. Do we have another question on this side here? I guess not. This gentleman towards the back over here. Microphone's on the way.
You almost made me move to the other side of the conference room.
They needed help.
I have two questions, one for Cindy and one for Mark. Cindy, I'm curious, what kind of support do you make available for the caregivers? And I don't know if that's out there or not. I know when our experience, we were in a major transplant center in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, and all of us have gone through the shock, the initial shock when you're in that first week of what the hell just happened to my family, right? And at that time, I didn't have access to support. Fortunately, I connected to some people in the hospital. I mean, literally sitting at the end of the hallway, 2 a.m, you kind of make contact. But there was not a support, wasn't there, I didn't see it. So my question is, one, do you have it available? Two, how do you make people like us aware that it's there? Because I wasn't aware of it. I didn't see any of it in the hospital. And another question would be for Mark. I'd like you to just comment, if you would, a little bit about the minority issue. I'm curious as to the challenges, maybe some of the numbers. Where does your initiative sit with regards to the minorities?
Okay, I'll do the first half. So caregivers, yes, we do collect information, volunteers. So we can match caregivers with caregivers. They have their own set of needs and concerns, as I'm sure you're aware of. So it's interesting, many of my volunteers who come to us say, I'm doing this because I had no one to talk to, so I want to help someone else, which is just speaks volumes. So we do have a lot of caregivers in our system, and we get a lot of requests of connecting. I would almost say it's almost half and half at this point of caregivers to caregivers and patients to patients. So yes, the more we spread the word, the more we can get people out there, the better those matches are. And I've had people say that person was going through exactly what I was going through, and it just meant so much to me.
Part of that question was, what's your strategy? How do you make us aware?
How do
you make the people who are in that first week or two, how are they aware that that's even out there?
Well, we're trying to let people know who we are. So many of the transplant centers purchase our books, and after I don't know if you guys have had our book when you were diagnosed, and that's how they come to us. And so when they call our office or they're looking on our website, there's information about giving back and how to volunteer, and that service is there. And so we get a variety of responses that way. There's also some of our fellow foundations that will promote on their site. There was a whole rush. There was a Facebook conversation about us at one point, and we got a lot of volunteers and a lot of people who were looking for it. So they come to us in a variety of ways, and if you have more ways of how we can spread it, I am definitely interested in talking with you.
Hold your question to the microphone, please.
I think,
and he had another question.
Oh, wait.
Just ask you to hold.
Sure. And to go back to the question regarding minorities, if you look, we're very strategic in growing our partnerships with different minority groups. One example I can give you is the partnership we grow with the National Urban League. When you look up the makeup of the potential donors in the United States, 67% of the potential donors are Caucasian, 7% are African American, 7% are Asian American, 10% are Hispanic. So an example of African Americans, I partnered with one family in the Urban League. We registered 302 Western Indian donors at an event last year. So it's events like that, when they come up, we drop everything we're doing and make sure we're attending those, because registering minorities is one of our number one priorities.
Okay, ask your question, please.
It was just a quick comment to what he was saying for Cindy. Are you permitted to have information in the hospitals when people aren't aware, like, you can't think to process on the computer. You maybe don't know where to go to, like I think he was saying. You're in the middle of, like, do the hospitals not want us having misinformation? Or can you, like, give, notice? You know how you see notices everywhere in the hospital? Contact this group, go to this group. I don't know if that's making sense, but are you permitted to give information to, like, a hospital location or...
I actually don't know the details of that. I need to look into that. Each hospital has their own policies, I imagine, and there's so much information. It's so overwhelming in the beginning, but the more we can get it out, I'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting a lot of questions. Come on, team. We need some more participation over here. But we do have a question here in the front row.
I have a comment for Cindy. My husband was in Sloan August of 2012. The social worker met with us, and I thought such a large hospital I would be offered. And no, there was nothing. I mean, she met with us. It was basically about what was going to happen when you got home, who the caretaker was. She went over some things. A lot of comments were about the cat. You gotta have a cat, I was like, we'll take care of it, and I knew what I had to do to protect him from the cat. I had learned that prior, but I've never heard of you, and I had no one to speak to. I was on my own. And she's like, you guys are okay, and she never came back. We saw her once. She never came back.
I couldn't see half of this room. Can I just ask for a show of hands how many knew about BNT InfoNet before you came to this or before your transplant? Okay, how many knew about it before transplant? Raise your hands. Okay. And then after your transplant, did you learn more? Okay. So So I see through the book. Okay.
It is entirely possible that while we're going through this, your name in the back of the book or your name on a bulletin board isn't really going to be enough. You know, it's almost like I know my husband, if he were looking for the caregivers, if somebody just said, look in the back of the book, he would not have done that. What I think needs to be done, and probably with a lot of these things, is that somebody just actually approaches you and says, we can help you. And I know that's not probably possible, but if for some reason you could get more involved with the actual bone marrow doctors and like really like say, or well, we came from Sloan, our social workers were great, but anyway, but I mean, it just seems to me that just looking in the back of the book, or I never look on the bulletin boards. Honestly, I don't. You know, and it's a shame, but I don't. That's just me. You know, I mean, I don't know if anybody else does, but I don't. So
we have 2 minutes left, so
I just wanted to say my husband had an entirely different kind of experience, so I know they're out there. I had my transplant a year ago at Hackensack University Medical Center, and from the get-go, they were very concerned. And all of this information was provided. I had booklets, but I had people. In fact, when I was in there, both with the conditioning, transplant, post-transplant, the social worker was around constantly. They had groups meeting. They'd pull them in and say, gee, you know, we're so glad you came last time. Would you come again this week? And it really was a help, I think. And so that was very active. And what you're saying, I think, is important. They have to be involved when you're in the hospital and hopefully before. But that kind of thing is marvelous.
Okay, let's wrap up our formal Q&A with one last question from the back.
Well, I just have a comment, and I feel as though I have to share this. My husband also had a transplant, and during the time that he was in the hospital, there was a social worker that touched base, but it was just a one-time kind of experience as well. Soon thereafter, my mom was in a hospital, and in walked a person into our room, and she said to me, hi, you know, my name is Jerry, and I know your mom's being well taken care of by the doctors and nurses, but I'm here for you. And I almost fell off my chair after having been through what I had been through for so long. And it turned out to be a program which I have since joined. And this really addresses your question, sir. I'm a caregiver coach. I work with caregivers in hospital settings just to help people through, to do exactly what we're talking about. And it's a program that was started. The first program was where I live, up in Westchester, New York, at Northern Westchester Hospital, and it now has a replication model. And so it is available to be brought to any hospital imaginable, and we are growing tremendously at this point. And so I just want people to know that that's out there, and you can ask me afterwards if you're interested in this program.
Well, we've certainly hit a nerve and found an interesting topic to discuss here, but this does conclude our formal Q&A. Let's hear it here for our panelists.